UNWANTED.
What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Ricardo, also known as Ricky Vance, and a great episode for you today. Today we have two returning guests, two people that I'm truly grateful that throughout this whole journey of creating this show and meeting so many interesting people that I got to meet these two guys. Go back in the archives. We've had plenty of fun and interesting conversations. Brett Veinotte from the School Sucks Project and Richard Grove from Tragedy and Hope. Please check out their websites. Everything will be in the show description. I'm trying to push this whole idea of value for value, like some of the other podcasts do. This idea that if you get value out of this podcast, which I know many of you do because you do hit me up and let me know that you really appreciate the show, try to give back equal amount of value. And if it can be financially, great. We do have a Patreon page. I'll put in the show links, my PayPal account. If you want to tip the show, if you have a couple extra bucks, you want to do that. And I also have an awesome new merchandise store, the Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com. For some reason, www in front of that URL doesn't work. Just put in the Ripple Effect Podcast, MERCH.com, and it'll take you right to the merchandise store. We have female stuff, we have youth stuff, we have hoodies, tank tops, shirts, a little bit of everything. And I have plenty of new designs that I'm going to be uploading very soon and have even more stuff. So it has tons of different stuff. So definitely check it out. Great way of repping the podcast and supporting the podcast. Like I said, if you get some value out of the show, try to give same value back in regards to financially or in regards to maybe rating the show, taking some time to review the show, sharing the show, all that type of stuff. And if you do, I truly, truly appreciate it. I'm trying to put a little bit more effort into getting a little closer to doing this full time. That's kind of the goal. And I've kind of, focused more on the art and doing the show than all these other things, but I'm going to put a little bit more effort into just kind of letting the listeners know, hey, there's a lot of you guys out there. If everybody just contributes a little bit, I could do this full time. I could do more of these shows. I could focus more of my time doing these shows. And I'm sure you guys will love getting more of these shows as much as I would love giving you more of these shows. And I think these conversations, these discussions, these chats, very valuable. With that said, the show description, I'll have links to everything. I'm on YouTube, RV36, Twitter, RV36, Instagram, RV36, my music project, Theory6, which you can find anywhere you can get digital music, and Amazon, iTunes, all that stuff. And the song is called The Ripple Effect, which is a song you hear in the beginning of the show. If you like it, you can purchase it. That helps support the show. So there's plenty of different ways. PayPal, Patreon. And if you are a Patreon supporter, I'll let you know in advance who I'm booking, who I'm having on the show, all that stuff, and also my music. So, and if you want to send me a check, if you want to send me money, I'll give you my address. So I'll give you plenty of different ways. I don't want to make it hard for anybody. But like I always tell you guys, even though getting financial support is important, nothing is more important than spreading these shows. So please spread these shows. Share them, tweet them, tell your friends about them, which I know a lot of you guys are doing. Post them on your social media accounts, whatever social media you're on. I know a lot of people are leaving Facebook and Twitter and jumping on some alternative ones. So share them on those platforms too. So I also did the Vaccine Safety Awareness Marathon with Brian Festa from the CT Freedom Alliance, which hopefully that segment, that part that I did, that 1 hour segment of it is going to be available. I'll put that on my YouTube channel in my interviews playlist. So look out for that too. Charlie Robinson also did a late night one. I think he was on at 1 a.m. Eastern time. So he did a great segment too. So it was awesome to just help those guys out with that. As you guys know, that's one of those topics I'm very passionate about. And that's it. I think I'm done ranting, and I will see you guys on the next one. Enjoy the conversation. Peace. I just assume everything works until right before the interview, then panic when things aren't working.
Dude, I step in shit all the time, and I call that's why we have a do it live philosophy at Autonomy. Because if you plan everything out to when it's going to be perfect, you never get it done. So I'm not afraid to fail in front of them and crash and burn and be like, okay, can somebody help me with voice meter banana right now? I'm getting an echo in my ear.
Yeah,
And then somebody like Tyler's like, oh yeah, press A1, the top button. Okay, cool. Now we can continue the lecture.
is that the virtual cable software thing?
Yeah, it's like a virtual audio mixer type of thing.
Yeah, I have it. I couldn't figure out how to get it to work with Pro
I've been
Tools.
using it for 2 years, Ricky. I don't know how to work it yet, but I have two students who are. I told them like you should have a consulting business because people like me will pay and call you to fix stuff because it's important.
Yeah,
And yeah,
the
we have
way I
tutorials on it you can watch now.
get the how do I get you guys into Pro Tools is I have my speakers for my computer, and I actually have a cord coming out of my speakers output to the headphone output, and then going into my M box, which is like my interface, and back into Pro Tools. 'Cause my interface has my microphone going into it from a mixing board, and then I have to, wire it this way, getting it from basically my speakers into my interface again. But, Midnight Mike from the OBDM podcast is like, you should really attempt to use a virtual cable, so I can virtually do the same thing I'm doing analog wise. And I couldn't figure out how to do it. I've messed around with it forever. And it's
Dude,
just like,
yeah, that's the problem when you're talking to people smart. Like Midnight Mike's a really smart dude,
yeah,
and I could barely follow. I'm like, yeah, okay. So
he says
you and
stuff.
me on
Oh, you
you
just got
here's
yeah, go.
yeah the virtual the voice meter banana software. We should get on a call and have some people like just share screen and show us exactly what we need to do for our particular setups, right?
Yeah.
So you'd share your screen, me, Tyler, and Joshua would be like, okay, what do you got going on? And you're using this audio driver, you're feeding it into here, you're using OBS, XSplit, how you brokering it out, all these sort of things. And then I'm willing to bet Tyler could troubleshoot any of that stuff and leave you with knowing how to use it, even if you don't understand what it all does. Because that's how I roll with it.
Yeah, no, I hear you because it would be a better method, virtually doing it instead of having all these, this extra cable going from my speakers back into my interface. But
I
yeah,
like the cables. They're just hard to hide.
yeah, yeah,
I understand the cables. The cables don't mess up. Like you plug it in, it does its job if it has
that is
connected,
true.
as long as it's not broken.
And I used to play music, and that's kind of the thing about like I actually still have enjoyment in like plugging cables and stuff because like anytime before a show, that's all you're doing is like plugging this and that, and it just kind of gives you like that feeling of like, oh, shit's going down, like we're ready, we're plugging shit in right before the show. It gives you that feeling of like I don't know, it just reminds me of when I used to play music. But yeah, I mean there is something about like visually being able to see it and kind of makes more sense than like going through different programs and software, and you're like, okay, how do I do this or this setting or that setting? So there is
I still draw it out. I force like I'm trying to think of it conceptually, but then I'm like I just need to draw it out, input to output, and follow it through.
yeah, yeah.
That seems to help.
Well, so how are your guys' weekend going? Your long Labor Day weekend?
I didn't know it was really Labor Day until I don't know yesterday or the day before. I always work on Labor Day
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
It's for cubicle people that this weekend, right?
That is kind
They
of true.
haven't, it's like the end of their summer, the end of their free time. They're going into COVID too.
The second wave, the second. If I hear somebody say the second wave one more time, I'm gonna smack them. I'm like, second wave. Where the hell was the first wave? First wave, nothing happened. Like, what are you guys freaking
Second
out
wave of
about?
propaganda.
Oh my God, tell me about it. It is it still boggles my, it's like so obvious now that anybody who's still preaching on it, it's like, okay, I know where you politically stand on everything before you even talk about politics, because if you're still wearing a mask and freaking out and saying that do the right thing and wear a mask, chances are you're only saying that because you've been watching MSNBC 24/7 and they're scaring the shit out of you, because like literally there's just so much evidence that you can't trust any of the information that we've been told. That how can people still believe it or still freak out about it? I mean, it
They put a
boggles my
lot. Look, the virus is directly proportional to the people who watch TV, right? Let's just put it right there. I don't spend any of my time during the week really thinking about it. And other than, people sending me stuff like, oh, there's a second wave coming, I'm not really paying too much attention to it. Like I went fishing with Lucas yesterday. It was his first time fishing. Got him a fishing rod, tackle box, all that good stuff. And we went there, and there were people at the boat launch, and they all had masks on. I was like, oh boy, because we're not going to wear masks to go outside and go fishing. So anyway, we walked over, we went fishing. Everybody we saw around the lake, nobody had masks on. So it was just that one group of people who were probably from out of town who were wearing those masks. Everybody else was cool. Everyone smiled. Everyone said hi. He caught 2 fish, which is like a banner day because I fished for years with my parents as a kid when we went camping. We never caught anything. So it was really, really, it was a remarkable, awesome day.
Those moments are
COVID free.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, can I forgot how it works with the ripple effect. Is this the show?
This is I throw curveballs. I mean, if
I knew it was going to catch Brett off guard because I'm like, well, let's see how he handles Ricky's curveball.
Even people who are on the show all the time still fuck up. They're like, wait, you're recording, right? I'm like, yeah, I'm always recording. Well, I sound like the NSA. I'm always recording. But
hey, Brett, the good news for you is we all have our own recordings of this show, and there's raw footage of all the sections. So like each individual camera we have, and we have a group like Cam that has like Ricky's style. So you can take the footage and cut it however you want, buddy.
That's what I do. Love to cut. You know, let's take a lot of coverage, I say, in the actual production, and then let's just, you know,
ripple it on out there,
sculpt it down to something really nice. In the end, that's what I like to do.
You last time you were on, recently on the Union of the Unwanted. Actually, we're Rich. Hopefully, you and Brett can make the next one. There's a lot of people who felt left out because
Is it always going to be on Monday? First off, long-time listener, never been on the show. I was invited to go to the first episode, but you got it on a time where I've got appointments. I've watched every episode. It's a really great panel show, and I'm looking forward to being on Hollywood Square sometime soon.
Well, we gave it.
Hey, Ricky, if you could do it like on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, I would be at the next one. I know it's short notice because it's supposed to be on the 14th, but I can't make the next one either. And I loved it. And Rich and I had a long conversation about it, actually.
We've had meetings about this, too. So go ahead, Brett.
And I turned it into a little production called Post Proof World that I'm going to put out probably, I don't know, why not Friday, on the 11th. But my thought was it didn't seem, without being critical of anybody who was there, I thought the questions that I asked got kind of a lukewarm response, and I wanted to know what you thought. And that's totally fine because I threw like curveball questions that probably nobody anticipated being part of the discussion, but something to the effect of like, why has something so important as far as a movement is concerned, when we think about all the consequences of 9/11 and the reaction to it, why has this movement spun its wheels for almost 2 decades? And I didn't feel like anybody really wanted to contemplate that on the call.
I don't know if anybody had an answer. I honestly, I think, I really think people, it was such a good question, and people were like kind of analyzing it during the show and didn't really think it out themselves prior to the show, and maybe were a little timid about sharing their thoughts, on the show. I mean, I'm not one to, like, if I sound like an idiot on the show, that's fine. I don't care. But I think sometimes people are a little, I don't mind trying to rearrange and figure things out during the process of actually recording, where some people I find sometimes if they're not sure, they'd rather just like skip the question or kind of tiptoe around it than actually try to figure out where they stand during the process of having the conversation. But to me, that's the whole fun of having conversations, right? It's like just sharing ideas, challenging ideas, and a lot of times verbalizing your ideas, you realize how little you thought something out sometimes, and you and it forces you to do so, right? Because when you verbally have to express how you feel about something, sometimes you realize like, holy shit, I haven't thought this out as much as I thought I did, or I don't really have a good way of expressing it verbally like I thought I did, so it's I mean, I feel like it was probably because they were really good questions, to be honest. They're probably ones that people haven't really pondered on.
I think I agree. I heard you ask that question. I was like, no one has an answer. And then I was like, what's my answer? I'm like, I don't really have one right now. So I've thought about it for the past, week or so. And it comes back to The same reason 9/11 happened, right? The people who were populated in the country at the time did not have the contextual historical knowledge to see what was going on, and therefore they were left to believe what's on the TV. It's a very helpless, submissive, subjugated position. It's not a position of knowledge. It's not a position of wisdom and experience. It's what you do. It's fear, right? So from that aspect, school system, like the education system was changed into schooling, which removes free will and actually learning how to survive and thrive and critically think and have common sense and be able to communicate with other people. So that keeps people in a blind spot on 9/11. It also is the communications barrier going forward when you're trying to use logos and ethos to undo a problem that was created by pathos and mythos. So yes, in the investigative movement of people looking into the research of those events and those crimes and those murders that day, and the international warfare that has plagued the planet since, it's a serious topic for research, and there's a lot of things to dig into. And what you find is that the people that could have raised the alarm, told us something, they were bought off. So the trusted news sources who should have done investigative journalism, had their own comparison and contrast going on, just all repeated whatever was coming down from the top. And then the population didn't have caveat emptor, buyer beware. You know, they were just believing and internalizing everything they were told as truth. So it took a couple years to start to come out of that. It's a traumatic event. People don't know. There's fog of war. There's a whole bunch of contradictory information. But as years go by, that smoke clears. The evidence comes to the surface. Seven, the new World Trade Center 7 movie by Dylan Avery and Richard Gage, architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. That movie that you guys talked about the other night, that is something that people are like, why does it matter? It's because, first off, they could have waited a couple hours to bring that building down and nobody would have saw it. Nobody would have asked questions. Nobody would have seen anything. It was almost like it was put there on purpose at 5:20 that day. It's like, if you think you haven't seen everything with those two towers falling, here's one that didn't even get hit by a plane, people, right? I think that was there to set people off who were paying attention. And the struggle in communication, why is this still going on today where people don't get it? It's because we haven't learned to master our rhetoric. We've done the grammar, we've done the input, we've done the processing, that's the logic. We make sense to people who have contextual information and we can have this conversation. How do we bridge that gap to the people who don't have the contextual information, who have yet to do the comparison contrast, who have yet to come out of that myth, that cartoonish fable that they circulate as reality that everyone buys into? You have to outgrow that situation. You have to outgrow it with learning. You have to unlearn that fear. And fear is a placeholder. It is the starting point for knowledge, understanding, experience, wisdom, all these great things that come from that. But if they keep us paralyzed in fear, which is what they did with 9/11 and the TSA, which never went away. So that's where your masks are going in the future, right? It's never going to be safe. When it's safe means never to these people. They have a plan. They mask their plan in the charade, but their plan is overarching. Their plan's been going on for over 100 years. Their plan is methodical, it's well funded, it's well choreographed, and it's well covered. And the people that are supposed to tell us about such things, such dangers, such perils to our liberty, they're bought off for the past 100 years. So we've gone through generations of our families here in this country in the midst of what's going on today. So for people on a call a couple days ago not to have a complex answer to like, why is this still going on? And we have another thing going on right now that's kind of like 9/11 every day, right? And how do we organize and strategize and bring the tactics there? And we have a marketing problem from the freedom community. Like there is, like we've known about these things for almost 20 years now since 9/11. And still, not enough people have a grasp on it where they have a relevant, substantial, articulatable position that someone else can internalize. And that's because too many people try to tell things to people instead of asking the questions to draw it out, right? If you think about a lot of the great songs in history, they ask questions, right? So if you start with asking questions, and it's like goes back to the Matrix, Morpheus and the splinter in the mind. It's that question that they can't answer, that they're like, oh, I have Google. Maybe I'm going to start looking for this. Oh, all the Google things say exactly the same thing about this. That's a little suspicious. Maybe I'll go to DuckDuckGo or Start Page. And you start searching other places to get outside of the prescribed narrative, because the information and evidence that's outside the prescribed narrative is much more substantial, verifiable, and relevant to our lives and our safety and security than what they're telling us on mainstream media. So, yeah, that's what I thought about that question that Brett asked during that last show, and I'm proud of you for putting that show together, Ricky. You're a broker in truth at a time when truth and freedom really need that connectivity, that synergy that you bring to the table. So, thank you, as a viewer.
Thank you. I appreciate that, especially coming from you guys, because it's awesome to see people that I've been a fan of and listening to before I even had my own show, and then saying that people enjoy, what's going on with that. I think the world needs that. I've been having so many listeners hit me up just saying it's such just a breath of fresh air, just people able to discuss these things and not always agree on them, and just proving that it can be done, that people can discuss these issues, not all agree, and it doesn't have to turn into a heated argument. In many cases it's actually like a very casual, fun conversations that we're having, so it's the complete opposite of a heated argument. And but yeah, I think people needed it. I think the COVID lockdown for many of us podcasters and or just creators, I think it gave us a motivation. Like I was almost like, I wouldn't say I was a musician without inspiration, but right before the COVID lockdown, I don't feel like any topic or any one thing really I was super passionate about. I'm always like super passionate about the vaccine thing, and I felt like that was an issue that was being overlooked because again, like it's one of those issues that were coming to your home, to your family, to your loved ones, and it's not like geopolitics. Like I've said on the show, where you're like, hey, get mad about this war, and they're like, I don't give a shit. I'm cutting the grass. I'm going to the grocery store. I'm taking the kids to school. Like, doesn't affect my life one bit. So it's hard to get people angry or motivated to protest or get upset about that topic. But this affected all of us, and it continues to affect us. And the long-term effects of it are, I think many of us can't even foresee what long-term negative effects it might have on us. And when it affects your loved ones, your friends, your family, your children, like I think it motivates you in a way that nothing else motivates you. And I was super motivated. I had a swap cast with James Corbett and Sam Tripoli, like right in the beginning of the COVID thing, and people can go back and listen to it, and I forget which episode it was, but it was a swap cast, like right before this stuff really hit the fan, and we briefly talked about it. And honestly, I think at the time Sam, he's a new dad. James Corbett and I have pissed off many of his listeners by me talking about dad stuff when I have him on instead of talking about all the other stuff a lot of people want to listen about. But it's we end up talking about some dad stuff, and we briefly brought up the COVID thing, and all of us were undecided. Like we didn't, the conversation in regards to that topic didn't really go anywhere because we're all kind of like, yeah, I think I brought it up and kind of like just kind of was feeling out the other guys, seeing how what they thought about it, and we're all like, I'm not sure, like there's not enough information out quite yet and stuff. So I think it was a great example of how by the time everybody kind of had a feeling on what was going on, we didn't just jump into it. We weren't like trying to be the conspiracy theorist that like thinks everything is a conspiracy theory and jumped on it immediately. Like we were kind of letting the information come in, trying to analyze things and letting things play out. And there's a lot of characters I think many of us weren't that familiar with. You knew Dr. Fauci kind of, you knew Bill Gates and some of his influence on vaccine agenda and his links to big pharma, but we didn't know the extent of it. And so I think it was a really responsible, to me, like I look back at it and I'm like, there's a lot of people that I respect that I think were really responsible about it. I think by the time they were outraged and upset like myself and just like screaming like, hey, wake up people, like we took our time, we took our time and I think that's important, especially with all the stuff, and whatever 9/11 is one of those things where it's just like, there was a few people I definitely that like jumped on immediately, but I think there's also a lot of people that like, they were taking in the information like, okay, I got some doubts about what happened. But let me, before I jump on a team or pick a tribe and say, hey, I'm on this was an inside job team. Let me analyze everything. And I think that's a responsible way of handling it. I mean, it's funny, because this reminds me of so Richard Grove and I have the longest, I think, Ripple Effect podcast ever. I think it was like, I don't know if it was 3.5 or 4 hours, something like that. And it's funny because I brought him on to tell us a 9/11 story, and this is how ridiculous I am. We talked for 4 hours, and I not once got that story out of him. And it wasn't until after the show that I'm like, I am such an idiot. I brought him on, and how do I talk to him for 4 hours and don't even get the story out? I'm like, that I wanted to talk to him about. I did the same thing with Anthony Schaefer, from Able Danger and all that stuff, from that whole story. I had him on. I think we talked about cigars. This show is so ridiculous. I'm so glad people listen, because his story is quite important in regards to him writing the book, and then the book burning of just basically his story about Able Danger, and I didn't once bring it up, but I guess that's what some people like about the show. That's why I like it, because it's fun and you never know where the conversations go. But yeah, I mean,
See, that's funny because
Yeah.
for me, like a short thing is like 6 hours. Like I'll do a 6 hour lecture every Friday. A long thing would be a 20-hour podcast, and I've done like tens of those probably since 2006. So
I
the
don't.
idea isn't to like it's not me talking the whole time. It's conglomerating all the available evidence on a topic and putting it together and putting it out there. It's the same thing for the lecture. It's like if I'm teaching copywriting, that might take 2 6 hour lectures, but I put them into large data chunks so that people can keep coming back to that well and drawing from it. So I'm just a bigger fan of long form content. I'm sorry that we like exaggerated your format one time. That scarred you.
No, I mean, if I had people available longer, and if my wife wouldn't divorce me, I would go much longer most of the time. It's just, a lot of the time.
You got to plan. Look, I always say that freedom is a super marathon, not a sprint, right? So you got to be able to internalize larger chunks of data, because the way they control us is by those smaller, like here's Twitter. You think you understand what's going on because you read a tweet instead of a book or a set of books, right? So they've just been trying to shrink down our attention span to the point where I made an intro video for tragedyandhope.com in like 2013, and then it was 8 seconds. So about the same time as a goldfish. And a goldfish doesn't mind swimming around in that little bowl because it's only got an 8 second memory, and by the time it remembers that it's a slave, it forgets. That's about what they've done here to the American and the global population, by the way. It's not just America. We're just like the global leaders and anesthetizing people's brains using toxic media spun through 1,000 channels on everybody's cable box in their living room, right? So there's this whole dynamic going on of very complex information technology and warfare being used to control human beings, and we cannot learn our way out of it in little bite-sized chunks. So that's why my format has always been problem solving, and people who are into that like it. They glean onto it. It stretches their attention span out. They like the fitness their brain gets from it.
And while acknowledging, the problem that 8 second problem that does exist, and this was another reason why I brought that question up, where just to tie together a few things that we've talked about in the last 15 minutes here, there is a great opportunity here for the intrusive nature of the government's reaction to the whole COVID thing, right? And how politicized it is, and how it's almost become for like city and state governments performative. Like the crackdown is a signal that I'm not with Trump, right? The harder we crack down, it's so politicized that people are actually now paying a price for that. But because of the intrusive nature of this thing, that I think 9/11 pales in comparison to the potential that this has, like just what's happened over the last 6 or 7 months. I mean, this is absolutely unprecedented. We've never been through anything like this in our lives, as far as like restrictions and stay-at-homes and masks. But what it could be over the next 2 years. This is, like Ricky said, who cares about a war, right? It's 6,000 miles away. Even New York City seems like a kind of fantasy land for most Americans, right? Yeah, a plane or something wound up in a field in Western Pennsylvania, or didn't wind up in a field in Western Pennsylvania. Something hit the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia. And if you're not in one of those places, it's like, what do these things mean? So now This is nationwide. It's in every home. It's affected every business. And people are going to start asking questions, I think, in a way that they never have before, and they already are. I've said it before on my show, but conservative talk radio 12 years ago, like at the end of the George Bush presidency, when Ron Paul appeared on the scene, and they're like, this guy's kooky, he's a conspiracy theorist, they were just taking White House talking points and barfing them onto their audience. Now, conservative talk radio is like coast to coast, right? It's like, as far as like they don't really know what they're doing, so it's kind of unwieldy. They don't know how to explore the truth in an honest way. But there feels like there's much more of an alliance between those people and the kind of content that we're trying to create, right? So there's a strong conservative talk radio presence in Massachusetts, Ricky, where you are, right? Like 680 AM, and they take like national conservative people and local conservative people, and the local people are looking at it like in a very, very liberal progressive state, right? So that clash makes for a kind of interesting entertainment, their response to what's actually happening in Massachusetts. But those people are definitely broadcasting that they are ready for information that contradicts official theories. And like I said on the call, the Union of the Unwanted roundtable last week, this is a situation where if people started with 9/11, it wasn't like they just said, okay, now I understand 9/11 and I don't really care about anything else. It was a doorway that opened to, all right, well, how many alternative theories are there? Now, there's a danger here, and this is where I think like people like us being better organized, doing better marketing is really, really important, because one of the things that's cashed in on a kind of waking up that's happened in the last 15 or 20 years is this idea that there is no truth, that nothing matters, total nihilism, nothing is beautiful, rip everything down, destroy, I get meaning in myself by destroying things. And I think it's an impulse that we felt, right? Like a big lure of conspiracy theory is breaking people's frames of reality, getting some kind of power from I know something you don't know, and now I'm going to tell you about it, right? Whether they want to hear it or not. And I think that's like, those are the growing pains that a lot of us go through. I certainly did. But because people feel like they are lied to, right? So just one example of people waking up to this is through our higher education system, where a professor who has his own political agenda, his own economic agenda, his own social agenda, wants to put his arm around you or her arm around you and say, you've been lied to your whole life. Your parents have been lying to you. The public school, the K through 12 lied to you. But now I'm here to tell you the way it really is, because I'm cool, man. And all you got to do is kind of unquestioningly accept my socialist ideas or my progressive ideas as part of our new friendship that's all about helping you wake up to the harsh realities of the world, right? I thought this was really cool when I was going through college. I didn't know that it was a whole industry of professors doing the same thing. But the result is people stop at, okay, I've been lied to for my whole life, so everything is bullshit. Everything is bullshit. Nothing can be true. Nothing matters. Everything is ugly. Rip everything down. And we see the popularity. I mean, like, we all warned about that 5 years ago when the higher education social justice war fired its first shots. Right. And socially, like what happened at Ferguson, that might have been like six years ago at this point. Like, that was the beginning of this. But all of those programs, they're sending these people out with bachelor's degree. They're saying, go back, get a master's degree in law, go back, get a master's degree in education, go back and get a master's degree in human resources. You take this, we take these ideas and do full spectrum dominance. And now we see that happening. We hear people telling stories about, unconscious bias training at work. We see this being reflected in law in certain states. So this is real. It's happening. It's a kind of nihilism where people don't care about the truth, and all they're really looking at is like surface level skim. What does a person look like? Where is a person from? This intersectionality stuff that was actually about trying to understand human beings on a deeper level just got politicized, and now it's being used to divide people. So if people realize that they've been lied to, that is not enough. That is actually a bad situation, because it leads to the unrest that we're seeing. If we can't get people to take a step farther to replace, fear or anger with like a desire to be productive, to desire to put something meaningful into the world, if that never happens, the chaos that we see, and this is like one of the things that I thought was really important about that discussion is, yes, the opportunity is here. People are going to realize how much bullshit they have been fed. But how are we going to be, how is anybody who wants to do that work going to be a good guide and not just sell fear and anger pornography, which is a huge industry on the internet? But if you put people in that place and you don't give them the tools or the encouragement or whatever to get beyond that place, which I think we all have to go through that place, right? But if people get stuck there, and now it's a very, very easy place to get stuck because there's just echo chambers that make you feel good, that make you feel like you're right, that make you feel like it's okay to stay in this place, then we're going to see a lot more chaos and a lot less, constructivity coming out of this.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. It's one of those things like you look like the hippies, right? They were anti-war, but they never lost their ability to love and enjoy life. And it's almost like you're kind of right. It's like you're upset, but you're not doing anything creative about it. You're not using it to create something beautiful to inspire you to do something and really affect the world in a positive manner. I mean, just being upset for upset's sake, I mean, what good is that? It's just yeah, it's we're in a weird time. And because the other thing that worries me, right, is like you're saying, Brett, there's absolutely a opportunity to wake up and change the perspectives of people's that they have on the world like we've never seen before. But it always amazes me how quickly people go back to their pattern of thinking prior to being woken up, or whatever term you want to use. Because before this event, right, I mean, you had the Jeffrey Epstein thing, right? And the Jeffrey Epstein thing, there's a lot of people that most skeptical, anti-conspiracy theorist people were like, oh my God, like there's something more. I can't believe this. Like, without a doubt, like there's more to the story. This is crazy. Like, they were really open-minded to conspiracy theories, or at least I should say, I shouldn't use that term because you know what? I'm going to take the term back. I'm going to keep using it. But and the truth is, like, in no time, you're talking about another situation, and they're back to their skeptical thinking again. They're back to like, no, that can't be true. No, oh come on, what are you, conspiracy? I mean, I was at a barbecue late last night, and I have a friend of mine. He's a big history buff and whatnot, but he we were talking about so many different conspiracies throughout history. I'm like, history's full of conspiracies. I'm like, there's more conspiracies that are true or have truth to them than there are conspiracies that aren't. I'm like, name some conspiracies that are completely bullshit, and I'll name some that are that have absolute truth to them, and you can look them up yourself, which has become harder and harder. But he's like, well, and this is the thing, like this is how ridiculous these conversations get, because they're like, well, flat earth, I'm like, yeah, you can bring up flat earth, you can bring up reptilians. I'm like, once you bring up the real over the top ridiculous ones, right, or that aliens built the pyramids, and I'm not saying any of these things are ridiculous in regard, I mean, I haven't even looked into these things enough to say that they're completely ridiculous, and I'm always open to being wrong. So I'm like, there's a lot of stuff that I thought without a doubt couldn't have any truth to, and I was completely wrong about. So I'm just saying, like, those are the ones that I don't have any real evidence of. I haven't researched it enough to say, hey, here's some good resources to learn about these topics. But I'm like, you take those away, I'm like, everything else, I mean, from Hitler making it to Argentina, to the coups throughout history, to the NSA listening to you, I mean, these were all things that were ridiculous at some point. There were things that people laughed about and didn't think there was any truth to, and only came out much later when it became kind of like public knowledge. And I mean, Pearl Harbor for a long time, I remember when I was really into researching alternate history or alternate views on history, there's still a lot of historians that just, oh no, we didn't know it was going to happen, oh, this and that. And it's like, and then you talk to people and they're still like, oh no, that's a conspiracy theory. And now it's like, it's just kind of like common knowledge that it could have been prevented and it was provoked.
Well, this is what I think the sweet spot is that we're trying to find with what you're saying, right? So I remember quick anecdote and then some advice. 2011, after the bin Laden thing happened, where bin Laden, it's the end of bin Laden, right? Then that sentence is very pregnant for the insertion of very open for the insertion of various theories about what happened to bin Laden. But I was at a wedding in New Jersey. Then I happened to drive by Rich's house. We talked about it for a while. And then like the next day, I wound up at a family dinner with about 12 people where all the adults were very conservative. And they're, you know, primed to believe that Obama is lying about this or using this for some kind of, so it was a golden opportunity, an opportunity that I had never had. And I think my mom said to me, so Brett, what do you think happened with bin Laden? And I went on a rant that lasted probably 25 minutes, and 12 and a half minutes into it, I said, geez, I sound like the craziest person in the world right now. The number of things that I've kind of rolled together.
Yeah.
This. So the
I did that
spot,
last night.
Yeah. And the sweet spot is, number one, go watch the movie Conspiracy Theory with Mel Gibson, right? It is a how to not try and share information with people. This shouldn't be your body language. This shouldn't be your cadence. This isn't what your apartment should look like. This isn't how many copies of Catcher in the Rye you should own. This isn't what you should do. It is like, it always, when we're kind of making a space between like seeing an opportunity to talk about these things and like actually talking about them, having that image in your head before you start doing this, like, don't be that guy. Don't be that guy. But the key in helping people make meaning, because you talk about people just returning to their comfort zones, right? Or like it's Groundhog Day. I've had this conversation with you, Steve, or uncle or dad 12 times. And then, you know, I think we get somewhere and I come back and you're right where you were the last time we started.
True. So true.
People need to establish patterns, right? So the news is never going to be like, all right, now we're going to cut to Richard Grove, who's standing in front of a brain model, and here's Jeffrey Epstein in the middle, and you see all these people that he's connected to. That's never going to happen. Everything is just like an isolated event. It's like how we learned history in school. What does World War II have to do with World War I? Nothing. It's an entirely different chapter in the book. At the beginning, it might said, yeah, some things happened after World War I, and that may, but who cares, right? The causality is missing. The patterns are missing. So it's very easy for these things to pop up, get whatever play they get in the mainstream, and then just kind of vanish as not being part of a pattern, not being part of a larger thing. So when people do that thing, because I know I've done it, I did it that day when this opportunity opened to talk about what I thought happened to Osama bin Laden, really, we just barf all of this stuff up in a kind of unorganized way, but we're trying to do something. We're trying to establish a pattern, right? We're trying to build a case. So then it comes down to what Rich was talking about earlier, which is rhetoric. And a huge part of that is understanding exactly where the person is that you're talking to, or group of people is that you're talking to, and making some kind of effort, have some kind of consideration to meet them where they are, not where you want them to be, right? Because that fails almost every time. We just get like, why are you not here? And then we get frustrated and angry with them, and it becomes contentious very quickly. So I think there's a lot of self-monitoring, like what's going on in our own heads when these opportunities come up, but also what the other people are experiencing, like self-awareness in these situations is really important. But that's what I was saying in that meeting last too. It's self-awareness of a whole movement, right? We're in a post-proof world. People don't care. Like Building 7 is a smoking gun. Cool story. No, it isn't. Somebody else said it wasn't. Somebody I trust more. You know, who cares? The smoking gun, undeniable proof. This means nothing to me. Evidence? What does evidence mean? Nothing. None of those words mean. So this was a much easier project 15 years ago. And we're seeing how it looks in the public dialogue about this whole COVID thing. Nothing matters. Nothing matters to anybody except what side they're on. I mean, there are outliers, right? There are people like us. My position has changed on it based on a willingness to accept new information and be wrong and not have, I think, my brand tied to a conclusion about it. But if your brand is tied to a conclusion about it, as far as finding the truth is concerned, you might be screwed. You might be in a lot of trouble, because if you can't say, my brand is about finding the truth, my brand is about this position, like David Icke did, right? David Icke said, well, I've been doing this for 25 years. This fits everything else I've said. But it didn't strike me as a person who had a very curious approach about it, right? It seemed like he had a lot of facts, or a lot of, things that he had put together. But when somebody just comes out and go, yeah, this proves that I've been right all along about everything, just like I said I was. That doesn't strike me as a curious person who's really trying to explore the truth of something. So that's that.
Yeah. I notoriously, what I do, and I find myself doing it all the time, and maybe it is the wrong approach, but like, for example, last night, or in many cases, I'll have a conversation about something, and if I find that they're a little skeptical about something, I'm like, okay, well, let me give you a couple real, like, things you've been lied to, and I'll bring up like some historical things. I'm like, you can look this up, you can look that up, and then I, next thing you know, I'm, like you said, Brett, I'm like, I end up going on this long rant. I'm like, and did you know about Rick Ross, who was, who's drug trafficking, and do you know where that cocaine was coming into at Meta, Arkansas, linked to Bill Clinton, linked to, I'm like, do you know about Gary Webb? How do you not know about Barry Seal? Like, and next thing you know, I'm like, but in a way, sometimes it has worked, because what I'm trying to do, I think, when I go on these long rants, it's like, I'm like, okay, here's some good evidence and some good examples that you've been lied to, some stories about conspiracy, some stories about cover-ups, some stories about historical fiction being sold to you as fact that you weren't aware of, and you can look these things up. And if I give you enough of that, then you realize, okay, maybe I should be questioning more things than I think of. I should be questioning. And again, like, sometimes everything's about, who I'm talking to, and how they're going to take it. Not, when it's no different than, like, if you have friends, there's one friend you can say, hey, you're not going to wear that shit today, are you? You were not going out with that shirt on, and then you have some friends you're like, hey, I think you look better in another color, it's like, or the way so it's like, counting on who you're talking to, you do have to kind of read them and know if they can handle what you're presenting. But yeah, without a doubt, I think it's almost like, sometimes we get excited, right? Like, we get excited that, like, somebody might be open to the idea of questioning things. Like you said, like, they were primer to the idea of, like, possibly they were lied to. I mean, maybe because of their political views or whatnot. Like, now, if I talk to a Trump supporter, I know they're much more open to the idea of questioning the whole COVID thing, the mask thing, Fauci's link to the vaccine agenda, Bill Gates, all this stuff. And it's like, okay, is it because they're truly a curious, skeptical person, or is it because their tribe is on this side of the argument? And we talked about it about 9/11, and it's so true. Like, people forget, like, Fox News right now is like, oh yeah, they're the most honest ones out of all of them, like, they're not as bad as CNN and MSNBC. Look at the way they've been reporting on all this stuff. But it's really because they're defending their team. And when you look at 9/11, they were lying to you more than anybody, so it's just like, why? Because it was their president that was trying to convince you into going to a war and linking Iraq to September 11 and Afghanistan, all this stuff. So it's like, yeah, your team's on the right side of history, or at least more on the right side of history than the other team right now. But if we had a Democratic president, and whatever they stood for, they'd be promoting that, so it's like, or they'd be against that. So it's all politics, and I think commonly we like to think like, oh yeah, this person, they're open-minded because they're questioning things. This is good. But then we have to think, okay, are they really questioning things because they're curious and skeptical, and they've made some progress in regards to questioning things, or is it just because this is a topic that defends their team?
Right. I think it's about the narratives of the team, and it's all come full circle recently. It's like, if you go with the official mythos of 9/11, bin Laden was the bad guy. There was a good guy on our side, according to their Storyland cartoonish version of what happened, that shot bin Laden and killed him. Well, now because of COVID, Delta kicked that guy's kicked off lifetime because he wouldn't wear a mask on a plane. Right? So the hero from 9/11, killing bin Laden, that whole thing, that narrative has been sacrificed for the let's all alienate anyone who's not in their cult of hooking up their air intake to their exhaust. Let me just put it that way, right? So that goes back to these questions you've been raising about conspiracy and World War II or any of these types of things. Like, the question is not whether or not those things were conspiratorial events, because there's plenty of evidence that there is. But it's if I go through the trouble to explain that to you and lift you up so you can understand, what then will you do? What actions must you then take if this is true? If this is evidentiary and there's substantial, verifiable, multi-dimensional, look from many angles and see this is going on evidence, It takes self-responsibility, discipline, and scheduling your success, and people don't have that. So that's why they revert back into that Groundhog Day that you guys are referring to. Like, I've looked at this problem for a long time now, and I see the mechanics and systematization of everyone else's stimulus reaction, right? They have a puppet show going on out there, and you can see it going on. You know, what flavor of fear are you on today so I can best communicate with you? Oh, you're tuned into CNN? Let me speak to you this way, because otherwise you're going to treat me as a non-human, right? So there are things going on in our society that are drastically changing from the narratives that we've had since the beginning of the 21st century. They're actually sacrificing heroes that got them here in this story, right? The next step is when people are addressing conspiracy, you might also, again, offer to lift them up. It's like, you know, I'm not talking about the internet. I'm talking about Machiavelli. Have you heard of him? He wrote a handbook on how tyrants can rule people. There are many chapters in many of his books on conspiracy, right? Let's start talking about the history that led us here into this blind, like, we're all blind, deaf, and dumb in this place as far as, like, when you look at what's really going on, what they tell us what's going on. And until you take off your blinders and unstuff your ears and open up your mouth and start to be able to articulate something that's substantial and verifiable in objective reality, that's the only thing that has currency between people. The rest of it's just entertainment, right? So then you get into something like World War II. Let me ask you, Ricky, if I presented you some clear and present evidence in their own words that there was an inside job, a conspiracy on that attack, if I presented you with that evidence, what happens then, right? Are you willing to integrate that into your life and carry that knowledge and that evidence to other people and let them know? Because if you're not, I'm not going to share it. And that's where we should all draw the line. We shouldn't be trying to spread information to people who don't want to receive it. We shouldn't be asking people to carry this valuable water that we've taken time to collect if they're just going to spill it out and not share it with other people.
But
right?
doesn't that cause the issue too? Because, you know, that's a conversation that I think I have a lot with people is there's like two types of thinking, right? There's some people that do agree that it's like, well, if they don't want that information, then screw them. Ignorance is bliss. Let them be ignorant. And they'll live in their little happy world where, you know, they think they have it all figured out. But
their ignorance can infringe on your freedom. And that's what you're seeing in the place right now. All the people, the other 50, the silent majority, the 50% that don't vote red or blue, the people that stand back and watch everything and are always disenfranchised by the system, they have done a just leave me alone kind of Ernie Hancock, like, I'm going to be over here doing freedom, you guys do your thing. But now their ignorance is infringing, encroaching, and is like dissipating freedom as it exists right now. And that is not accidental. That is a playbook. It's a playbook from Saul Alinsky. It's a playbook from the communists in World War II. It's a playbook that goes back into the 1800s. Well, there's a playbook that's creating civil war right now, and they're just rolling it out without any mental resistance and not a whole lot of alternative media resistance, except for the people, the small band of characters that you've gotten on the Union of Unwanted that represent those of us who are like research and liberty and evidence-minded producers trying to get news out in the midst of all this other noise that they just saturate people with. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, let's plug it, because everything you're talking about, if people want to watch a great documentary, I'm always recommending it. State of Mind, The Psychology of Control, because this does go into some of the history of it. And
The Minds of Men by Aaron and Melissa Dykes is it's tight.
Are those still online? Because so many
Minds of Men is State of Mind's on the Tragedy and Hope site. It's well hidden, but if you search in the box, you can find it.
Because there's so many old documentaries I used to watch that and just videos and researchers that I know they exist, but I'm having a hard time finding them. You know, it's like it doesn't pop up like it used to, you know, like.
All right, so they're getting deep sixed, right? And I've noticed that, and I got a lot of the best stuff on DVDs. So I knew when Google came out and said, we want all your video from all over the planet, that was their original goal. Every piece of video from on the planet was going to be on Google Video. I was like, there's going to be a lot of good stuff here, and then they're probably going to take it away. So over the years, I've made a good job of archiving. I've got some friends at a company called Content Safe that have thoughtfully backed up a whole bunch of YouTube sites for those of us who might get censored. So like Corbett can never go away. Corbett's content will always be available, and it's on IPFS right now. Luke's content won't go away. Those are Ernie Hancock projects, right? So there's a couple different groups of people that are working to have permanent, can't touch it, you can publish to the internet and it's not going to be censored, and as long as you have interest it will continue to be there, right? So that's like IPFS. So there are ways that we can not only preserve but we can repopulate Now, once we have some of these things set up that are untouchable, I'll take these DVDs and scan them back in and digitize them and put these things back up, because they've tried to delete so much off of YouTube and all the other platforms that are out there. There's a lot of good documentaries that have been made in the past 20 years on these topics, and they've tried to basically deep six them all and tell the future that these things never existed. So my struggle is always, how do we collect these things and get them to people in the future? Put them on USB drives, pass them out to people, proliferate it, get them to get this information, internalize it, make it part of their lifestyle, and carry it forward and give it to future generations. And I've had a lot of people who have done stuff like that, and I know that if we keep doing this, people in the future have a chance at freedom still, because we are actively working toward that end right now.
Yeah, no, it's super important. I mean, I think Brett, you brought it up on the last Union of Unwanted. The RSS feeds seem like it's one of the few places where you haven't seen as much restriction. I just had Jason Bermas back on the show, my last show with John Finch, and it still boggles my mind that he doesn't just put his stuff out as audio. Like, I'm just like, I've told Jason so many times, I'm like, just put it out as audio. I'm like, you're gonna have.
All right, so wait. Does he have a production team, dude? He's a one-man he's like, if you want some audio and you're in the audience, so anyway, if that's an issue, if you think Jason should have audio and have a podcast, RSS for all his great productions, because he's doing it 5, 7, 9 times a day, everybody, I agree. I watch all this stuff, and though I watch the videos, I appreciate people could want the audio, and I'd be willing to put a couple apprentice interns on his project to do that and make that an automated type of thing. So if you could get me, if you think that needs to be done, Ricky, get Jason on my schedule and I'll hook it up. I'll sponsor that.
I've been trying to get Jason to do that for a while, because it's same thing with the, I've been on Ernest Hancock's show, and we talked about Luke from We Are Change, and same thing. And me and Ernest were saying the same. We're literally on the same page. He's like, he's been telling Luke the same thing I've been telling Jason, and it's like, get off YouTube, or at least put a.
You got to leverage YouTube. Like Jason says, he's demonetized, but he's not really, because he could be making calls to action for a high value product that he has yet to create, but could easily create with the infrastructure that we've offered him several times, right? So there is a potential. While you have YouTube, you got to use it to do something other than try to make ad money.
Yeah.
Right. So that potential is there, and also having a personal media platform that delivers your content other than just YouTube and can decentralize it out to many platforms, one to many. Upload it once, and it goes many places. These types of tools can put people like Luke and Bermas and yourself and me and Brett on turbo boost, because it allows us one to many activities. We can spend our time producing, and we can have other people doing the editing and distribution and things like that. And that's becoming a reality for a lot of freedom, liberty producers these days.
Yeah, that's a big part of monetizing this whole podcasting. It's like, my goal is to one day eventually do this full time, but anything that gets in the way of me just having these conversations and putting them out there for free, I'm not interested in. I'm not, like, I've had people hit me up with ads. I've had other websites, like, hey, do you want to do a exclusive show on here or whatever? But it's like the Patreon thing, it's just like, I don't want to put anything behind a paywall. It's just, everything's about like just putting out the conversation, spreading them as far as wide. I've taken a lot of influences from people that I like. James Corbett, I've always loved the open source type thing. Like, okay, let me do my work. Let me do what I love. Let me put out this important stuff. Let people upload it, put it anywhere they want, because the information is more important than anything. And then I guess you find a way of kind of monetizing later, without having to, restrict how far, your work goes. And so I love that concept. I tell people, upload it, put it anywhere you want. I don't care if you're not stealing it, because I'm telling you to do it. Put it anywhere you want. It's all open source, and it's a passion project. But I think a lot of us are like that. We're just like, it's like a good musician, right? During the '80s hair metal scene, it's like all the good bands that were doing it because they actually love music, or they're being creative, or they had some stories they wanted to tell with their instruments. Then those are the ones that stuck around. All the ones are like, well, this is a quick way of making a couple bucks. Let me just jump on this wave of this trend at the moment and try to make some extra bucks. So those are the ones who don't last. So and even Rogan. I mean, Rogan, I always loved his philosophy of like, I'm just going to do, people said his, like you said about long podcasts, there are people like us who love long podcasts, but he was told by a lot of people, like, it's too long. Like who's going to listen to a 3-hour podcast? And apparently they're all fucking wrong. So it's like, that shows you something. I mean, there's an example people who were told, don't do this, don't do that. That's never going to work. This isn't going to work. And then they're like, you know what? I'm going to do it because this is the way I want to do it. This is the way I love doing it. It's a passion project. And then they end up proving everybody wrong, So I remember when I was growing up, Slipknot was a 9-man band with 3 drummers, 2 percussionists, 1 drummer, and they all wear masks. And that seemed like the craziest fucking thing ever. And it just like, all of a sudden it's like, holy shit, what the hell is this? And so it's, I'm sure they were told by a lot of people, like, first of all, you're going to split your shitty income, but with 9 people, that's never going to work. You're never going to make a living. And next thing you know, they were one of the biggest bands when I was in high school. So it was just, yeah, it's amazing how many times that happens. I think it's a great lesson learned from all that. Just like, hey, do what you love and keep doing it, and eventually, the success. And of course, success is subjective. Everybody has a different definition of what success is, but whatever your definition is, I'm sure you'll accomplish it and get there if you just keep doing what you love. And I mean, that's what makes, I think, what we're all doing so easy. It doesn't feel like work to me. It just feels like something I enjoy doing. And if we had 1 listener, we would still be doing it, and
I think the problem is that most of the people who had that mindset about this, when these opportunities became available, like having a YouTube channel or making a podcast, most of them aren't doing it anymore, right? Like the average longevity of all podcasts is 7 episodes, right?
really,
It's 7 episodes, yeah, because so many people do it once and they go, nah, that's not for me. So if you think about people who have really valuable things to share, I would say that a lot of deliberation, because I started because I had a lot to say. I needed an outlet to say it, and I didn't really care what happened. I had a job, it was a hobby, and then eventually it overtook my job, and I quit my job way before I should have, but I did to pursue this full time. And I think having a better sense of organization and a better vision from the beginning is really, really important for the sake of longevity. Like, how does this thing sustain itself? Can this thing sustain itself? And it's not to say like never do a passion project if there's nothing in it, but if that, nothing in it for you financially, but make sure your financial bases are covered, because that is, a really foundational need that if it's not met, you're not going to be able to, do anything creative in a meaningful way. Now, Rich and I did a show with Ernie Hancock like 5 years ago, and it was something like our place in the emerging market for freedom. And we were in a
How to align our values and actions, and get above playing for change on the corner and saying, look at this really good work I'm doing, come on, will you give me some money? It's like we needed to up our value, and that was the beginning of the conversation. Go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, and I think we were in very different financial situations, both of us then. But the planning for that show is like, what are we going to do? How are we going to keep this going, right? And we had good followings. We had support systems through listeners who wanted to be paying members in our community. But it was a real struggle. And I think, and I don't want to speak for you, Rich, but we were both got started in this because we felt like we had to speak, and maybe we'll figure out the rest of it later. And I know now, and Rich has done obviously a much more comprehensive job with this. We're trying to make it so other people don't have to go through the lengthy process that we went through. I lived at one point on, when I quit my job, I'll give a dollar amount. I lived on $300 a week. $300 a week was my salary for the show when I quit my job. That's not good planning. That didn't make, I had to reduce the quality of life that I had tremendously. And it was a real struggle for a couple of years. So better planning, better vision. I think those are, that would be my advice for people who want sustainability with what they're trying to do.
Well, and now that we're digging into that, when I did my first podcast, 9/11 Synchronicity, which I launched in 2006, I wasn't looking for a present day real time audience at all. I was just trying to put a message out on the internet to the future is how it started. That's literally how it starts. It's a message to the future of America, because the people at that time had no understanding of what was going on. And so I was like, people at this time don't understand, but people in the future probably have enough context to see what I'm saying, right? So I'd put that message out, and then people did listen to it real time, like a lot of people, and that's why I launched the podcast from that. And then for years after that, man, like I was a pro se litigant in court. My wife was waitressing, and we had gone from making, $250,000 a year each before we got into lawsuits and whistleblowing and stuff like that. So we went from up here to down here. And then what we were doing, like I was writing legal documents. There's no money in that. I'm just, that takes a lot of time. And putting the podcast together took an enormous amount of time. Wasn't really any money coming from that. So it was like I was doing what I was doing because it was necessary, because the research was right there. I had the time and the wherewithal to understand it and go through it and communicate it. That's all. And then it turned into something. Then it gained momentum. Then it turned into an online community in 2009. And then that's where we started having real-time interactivity with people, and not just a one-way put it out through the podcast. So the community aspect has always been like the secret sauce, because that's where you do real-time learning and dynamic growing in the midst of other people, challenging your beliefs, not being an echo chamber.
Yeah, no, I see. So I come from a different perspective a little bit, because kind of what Brett said not to do, or isn't a great idea to do, is exactly the way I've kind of thought it out. It's let me do what I love. Let me keep doing it, and don't make it feel like work, and don't concern myself about money or how do I financially I guess do this, and then just keep doing what I love, and hopefully at some point it gets big enough where I can monetize it in an easy fashion. But the thing is, so this is the thing is,
when you do it right, you won't have to monetize it. You have to separate the thing you're doing from the expected result. It's like a wake behind the boat, the income. Just focus on being excellent and exactly what you're doing. At ease, having a good time, not like work, talking with some friends about real life things. Like we all know each other in real life, and we see each other from time to time in human form. So it's not, it's not work for us to have a conversation.
I'm going to get you guys annihilated on some cigars and bourbon one of these weekends.
I was going to wear my Cohiba hat today, but I forgot. But yeah, the bourbon, actually, Ricky, I got a birthday coming up in a couple weeks. Let's have a party, bring the bourbon and the cigars here, and we'll have a little soiree. Nice. Brett, you're within driving distance. You can come too.
Yep.
Let's do it. Or even yeah. Or
talk to Lisa. We'll get it organized.
Yeah, definitely. But this is the thing is, so my background a little bit, and I'm sure people who listen to the show know it a little bit. Like, I was born in Portugal. I always say, like, okay, from a poor, my family was poor, but when you poor, it's kind of like, I don't know.
They're working class.
Well, we're
and how to do stuff. They're not poor mentally. It's just they didn't have a lot of Federal Reserve notes, right?
Well, it's not like I'm looking to get, exactly. Like I'm not trying to get sympathy, like in regards to poor, because when you grow up on a farm and you're surrounded by friends and family, and you have all the food you can ask for because you're growing it, and you have all the alcohol you want because my parents were, winemakers. They still make wine. My great grandparents, everybody throughout the generations made wine. So you always had wine, you always had food, which means, like, even though you're doing physical labor all day, and you always had family, because my dad was one of 12, my mother's one of 7. So a huge family. You're surrounded by people all the time that you love and you can play with and hang out with. So even though you didn't have the material things, and they've done studies on this, how, like, when the gap between the richest and the poorest is greater, the anxiety levels go up, depression levels are higher, all this stuff. So if you're surrounded by people who have basically the same shit you have, which isn't much, but you don't have the neighbor who has a giant house with the Rolls Royce, you're not really envious of much, so so even though poor, it does not like unhappy and like you on the side of the street asking for money. Just we didn't have all the material wealth that people have in America, or so I think Americans looking at where I was born and where my parents were raised, it would look poor, so that's kind of what I'm trying to let them visualize it. But my point is, so we end up coming here, and money was always a topic, right? It was always like like most people know, like relationships, a lot of stress comes from money issues, right? And so my mother was just, had the philosophy of, making, she didn't say this, but it's basically the way she thought was, and it's true, making money and saving money is the same thing. If you're making a grand a week, but you're spending 900 on strippers and cocaine, you don't really have much besides, I guess, some good memories. But if you're saving every penny and you're making much less, you can, from her perspective, from my parents' perspective, you can get ahead. So because I think it's a little bit is that trauma, and it's not like it, but I can find myself my dislike of talking about money and my dislike of thinking about money comes from that upbringing, from like it was always the topic, like nothing else was important. Like if there wasn't a way of financially getting it, like if I've always been a athlete. I skateboard, I BMX, I got into basketball, I play soccer, I do a little bit of everything, and I loved sports. I loved the competitiveness of it. I loved the way I felt from just like getting that sweat and being exhausted, and that feeling of after I'm done just being exhausted. I played basketball Saturday morning. I played soccer late last night for 2 hours. I mean, your mindset is at a point where like you just don't stress about anything because you're so physically exhausted. You're just like, you don't have any of that build up tension. And, or if you did, you got it off your chest. And, but to my parents, it was always like, well, what's the point of doing that stuff? If you're like, you get hurt, then you can't go to work, then you lose money. Like everything was about making money. Like there was no, there was no concept of doing something just because you enjoyed it. Like to them, that seemed like a waste. Well, I shouldn't say my dad, because mostly my mother, that seemed like a waste of time. So I live my life in regards where like even now I don't like talking about it. I don't like thinking about it. I tell my wife like, hey, how much you need for bills? Okay, great. I don't even want to know the total. Just tell me how much to transfer to account or whatever you need. And I don't I don't even want to think about it. And it's just like I'm in a happier spiritual place because of it, because I don't have that extra stress. I can just focus on spending time with the family, spending time with the kids, doing the things I enjoy. I mean, if we basically could like, decide like, hey, should I, do I want to spend more time doing things I have to do or spend more time doing things I'd like to do? I'm like, well, I'd rather do things I like to do. So let me find a way where I can live my life, be, somewhat comfortable, and yet still, have less time spent focusing on all those other things. And to me, like, is there ways, like we have a family owned construction company, without a doubt we could be much bigger than we are. We just we've been around for a long time, since '04, I think, when we were established. And in a way, I almost feel like I stunt the growth of the company because I want to make sure I have flexible hours. I want to make sure if I need to get home because the kids don't feel good, or if I need to take a day off, I can. We work with big companies. We subcontract with big companies where these guys are very successful. I mean, millions and millions of dollars, but they're at the office at 5 in the morning. They leave the office at 6 at night. I get calls sometimes. I'm at the park with the kids. I'm getting work calls, and I'm just like, what are you still doing at the office? Go home to your family. I'm like, what do you do? So it's like, my point is like all this stuff, like it is a different perspective. It's probably not the best advice, in regards to like, there's definitely probably shortcuts and quicker ways of maybe establishing some type of financial method of doing something you enjoy. But my problem is always the fear of being so focused on financially, like how do I do this, that I'm not focused on why I started doing it in the first place. And then I get, because it's just like when we all start podcasts, or at least myself, that you get obsessed with analytics and how, which guests get the most downloads, how many shows I put out, how many shows I need to put out to get the maximum downloads, and all this and all these numbers, and then eventually just like, fuck it, I'm just gonna do what I love, and I'm just gonna do what I enjoy, and everything else will fall in place. And if it doesn't, at least I'm happy doing what I do. And that's why even with ads and all these, I've had some not many, but I've had some opportunities pop up throughout the years where people have offered like this or that or whatever, and I'm like, I don't know, man. That seems like it's going to get away of me putting this out for free. I'm not interested. Like I have a full-time job that pays the bills. Until this can pay, it gets big enough where it can pay the bills. I'm just going to focus on doing what I'm doing and whatnot. So I think
That's a good strategy. That's a
yeah,
good strategy.
I don't know if it's financially it might not be, you know, but the way, you know, but the way I look at it, it's
Look,
like
man, if you wanna try to make money from having like commercials and ads and stuff like that, you can like I find it would be abuse to the audience. Like I find that I've never done that. I've never had sponsors or ads or anything like that. And I've always like for the past 15, 16 years, we've made our living from doing this. So it hasn't been a hobby. So I've done it that way without marketing or going out and doing that stuff, just by producing things with relevant, substantial evidence attached to them so people can find the substance and pass it around. And then everything else flows from that, doing that service, providing that value. So as you provide more value out there, don't look at the numbers. Like I've never looked at the numbers, the stats. That's all a bunch of bullshit that wastes your time, keeps you from being productive. So if you just figure out what's the question, like how can I provide the most value to my audience today, long term, what have you, you focus on that. Don't worry about sponsors or ads or Squarespace or whatever people are doing out there, because they're grabbing at that stuff because they don't know what else to do. Here's the example. It's like BYOB, bring your own bucket. You live in a little town, there's a well. Most people go to that well, they wind the rope down, they get the rope wet, and they're going to bring it back up, and they squeeze that little bit of water out, and that's their income. All I'm saying is attach a bucket to the rope. You get a lot more. You only need to go once a day. And your buddy who knows how to do that, he spends all his time collecting water, and you're like, hey, that's crazy. You only need so much. Why are you going and wasting your time? What, instead of seeing your kids grow up, you're at the office at crack of dawn. Yeah. You got buckets of water stacked up. You don't even know what to do with them, right? So you are a logical human being who observes that and says, that's not for me. Good. I don't need to get a couple buckets of water a day. I'm good, right? But I have that bucket, and I know that I don't have that scarcity because I know how to use the well. It's always going to be there. It replenishes. There's trillions of dollars of currency going on around on the internet every day. Do something valuable and get in the middle of that. That's it.
But
find valuable problems to solve.
Oh, go ahead,
do
Brett.
that. Go ahead, Brett.
I think part of that has to become, well, it doesn't have to, but it's helpful if it becomes communicating the value that you have. Like setting aside some time to communicate to people. Somebody who was really influential to me was the great email marketing guy, Ben Settle, who said, if you have something valuable to share with the world, you have an obligation to let them know about it, especially the people who need it. Rich had a great line in the virtual summit that I did last year, and is an ongoing thing. Marketing is the convincing people to want what they need, and it's so true with so many things that are, these billion-dollar internet industries, like pick up more chicks, like the whole pickup artist thing, right? It's like, here's what you want.
Which we talked about in our last
yeah, you want more dates, you want to sleep with people, you want to sleep with more women, but here's what you need, right? You need to have better communication skills. You need to have more self-confidence. That's what I have figured. The pickup artist person says that's what I sell. But you'll get what you want if you do what you need to do. And so I just think, like, doing something that you love is super, super important for the rest of your quality of life. And if it provides value to a certain segment of people, it's worth telling them and reminding them that it does that. And then I think that's how the monetization begins. I was blindsided. Some dude was like, how can I send you $100 back in like 2009? And I was like, people will pay money for this? It was astonishing to me. But eventually there was a way to systematize it, and it worked out pretty well. I think obviously it's not, I would not at this point want to have all my eggs in one basket. In fact, I started a completely separate production business when things started to get a little bit nerve-wracking with Patreon, because I didn't like relying on, I never liked relying on YouTube. And I never really liked fully relying on Patreon. I think there's some people whose whole monetization comes from one or the other of those things. And that, to me, seems like a recipe for disaster, even if you're making a lot of money from it.
Yeah.
But another kind of upgrade to consider is a concept that's laid out in a book called The E-Myth, which is an old book. Rich, you've probably read The E-Myth, right? Where
Absolutely.
we start we start doing these things that we think we can make into careers because we love the act of doing them, right? It's a craft. It's something artistic. So we say the book that is used, the example that's used over and over again in the book, I think, is making pies, right? Lady loves to make pies, so wants to start a pie making business and winds up in an adversarial relationship with pie making, right? Because she just wanted, this is just the thing that I love, and I didn't know it was going to be all these other things. But what this book actually tries to do is map out the other things that is, right? You have to be an entrepreneur. You have to have a vision for what you're doing, right? You have to know where it's going. You have to have a clarity on why it's doing. There has to be, some kind of mission involved in doing it. And that is a hat that you have to wear, I think, to keep something growing and to keep something going. And then you have to be, to a certain extent, and this is the part that kind of sucks, you have to be a manager, right? Until you can hire other people to do management for you, right? You have to answer emails. You have to pay the hosting bills, those kinds of things. And you have to keep a level of organization that allows the operation to survive. So understanding what the parts are, I think everything is less difficult when it's mapped, obviously. So it's like, these are the, at least if I want to do this as a solopreneur, these are the 3 hats that I have to be wearing at the beginning until I can outsource these responsibilities, which is a great place to get to. But I think it provides enough clarity to say, all right, well, there is a way that this could be monitored, that I could do something that I loved, as long as I'm mentally prepared for the things that could wind up putting me in that adversarial relationship with the thing that I once loved. And I felt like I've been in that place with what I do at a couple of times. But that was a great resource for kind of getting out of reactive mindset about, all the various aspects of what has to go into doing this as a labor of love / job.
Yeah. Well, my concern is always, so like you look at like the London Reel, for example, right? Brian Rose, he obviously puts out important stuff, and especially of late because of all the censorship, he's fought back and all that stuff. So his platform and how big his platform is has been important to, getting out good information and important information, especially of late. But at times he seems like a pushy salesman, and he
does. Yeah.
You get so many effing emails from him. Like, you sign up, it's like, oh, you want to watch this
He doesn't
video?
know how to use it. Like, he has those tools, but he has I agree, and I did contribute to that fundraiser despite that, but then he sold our emails to everybody else, and now if you contributed, now you get offers from a whole bunch of people that aren't Brian Rose, and that's another thing I would note. Like, that's not good business. So I like his content, but he could use a little help on some of that back end stuff. I agree.
Yeah, well, but this is the thing is, like, so even like that's a good example too. And then you see, like, when he's proposing, like, oh, join this or join that, or it's like, oh, you can listen to our podcast for free. Just give us your email address, when you sign into our website. And next thing you know, you're getting email after email after email of like being kind of pushy. And like, I've always been turned off by salesmen because I feel like it's not like, they're not really, a lot of them, it's not in all cases, but in some cases, like, there's something about like how unsincere they are. Like,
they're
like,
cringy.
Yeah,
because
like,
they're persuading, tricking, conniving, pushing, creating high pressure, doing a whole bunch of things because they don't actually know how to solve problems, ask questions, and listen along the way.
But couldn't you make the argument that, like, well, obviously the Brian Rose method has worked, because it's like even him being pushy has worked a little bit, and him convincing people that, like, hey, this is a service you need that will be helpful. Like, when you hear him say things like, oh, we'll help you start a successful podcast, it's like, well, what if you don't have a good idea? What if you don't have anything interesting to say? What if, like, it's not that simple, where it's just like, find something you're passionate about, maybe, and then let that be your guide. But to just,
yeah, you're right. It's more of a long-term relationship building process. He's not using his email autoresponder to do that. I have a few students that have taken his courses and gone through those classes, and they're not bad, but it's a high pressure, zone, like what you just said.
Like,
so like when they came through enrollment, they're like, aren't you going to pressure me to close? Or I'm like, no, we just have a cool conversation and make a better plan. And then I know if I let people do what they do, Like the wake happens behind the boat. You just have to move the boat forward toward problem solving and not be focused on, am I making big waves? It doesn't matter, man. Solve big problems. The rest happens. And that's what I think that his system or whatever he had going, that I talked to those students that went through it, it's not there. So it does take more time, consideration, thought. It's a super marathon. It's not a sprint. You're not just going to learn the podcast and monetize it unless you're going to whore yourself out to a bunch of things you don't know about.
Right.
I also think you're taking advantage of a lot of people who just need guidance. I mean, it's like the same people who join cults, right? Like, it's not a coincidence that people who join cults are people who like left their family and didn't have any friends, they're looking for a home. They're looking for community. They're looking for guidance, So it's like a lot of times these motivational speakers, I mean, I think sometimes people, it's no different or it's equally as valuable as just listening to I love heavy metal. So like listening to like As I Lay Dying right before I go to the gym, it's like, it's motivating me, like it's getting me going. It's getting me motivated to do something. It's no different than like when you hear an inspirational speaker and then you feel like, hey, that gave me a little bit of boost to go do this or go do that. I think a lot of times that's all it's doing. And in some cases it's also, sometimes it's people who are lost, people who don't know what to do. It's no different than like, I mean, I hate to use this example. It might be a extreme example, but I mean, isn't it similar to like, in my opinion, like what the military does? Like a lot of times it's like, wait, you don't know what, you're at a crossroads in your life. You're leaving high school. You don't know if you're going to go to college. You don't know what you want to do with your life. Join us. We'll help you figure that shit out. We'll give you this and we'll give you that. And you paint this beautiful picture of
yeah, they remove your volition and they repurpose your physicality to following somebody else's orders in a chain of command. What is a chain of command? It's a leash. So yeah, they put leashes on people who don't know what to do with themselves. That's the picture.
And the cult piece, I think, works really well too, where people try to create closed systems. And these can be people trying to sell something, or these can just be people who are, or systems that are outright trying to control people. Like school is a closed system. This is what we're learning from all of these shutdowns, right? If not for school, how am I going to have friends? How am I going to play sports? Where am I going to be in a band? I had a friend who left the Mormon church. And, part of retention in Mormonism, according to this person, I mean, these are very nice people and all that, but he said, part of the retention strategy was that it was like this full spectrum. All aspects of your life are tied to your belonging to this thing. If you leave this thing, then you don't belong anymore, right? How are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? And I think there are brands that send up a lot of red flags, right? Even if they have value, like Asprey, right? And Bulletproof has some great stuff, has some great resources, but seemed like he was trying to create like this all-encompassing approach where he was the central figure in this thing. And
that's another good example of sales and marketing, because he does have a high quality product. His marketing is a little like too in your face, like in case you missed it, in case you missed it. And it brings back to Ricky's point. People who are only like partially good at some of these skills can have severe success. And that's why they never grow their skills to actual problem solving that's low pressure and not attached to the end result of, will you pay me? Right? So in that situation, that's why you see a lot of bad salespeople that are cringeworthy out there. That's why people have a bad connotation of sales, and they don't want you to have a good understanding because it's too powerful a skill for an individual to have to determine their own future. That's a real reason. And then they fortify the people who do it poorly and pay them well so they never actually have to grow out of convincing, conniving, using NLP tricks, persuading, high pressure bullshit. So those people don't have the art, but they do have the profession and they do get paid, and that's what makes it cringeworthy.
I guess, I'm thinking if Brian Rose was here right now, what would he say? Would he say that, well, all of that pushy sales stuff and whatnot helps give me the financial, I guess, resources I need to build a platform that he built to fight against censorship, to do all the things he's doing. So one is necessary for the other. Even if you have the message, maybe you need.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't argue with that. And first, I would compliment him. All the fine work, love the interviews, love the production value, love the consistency, right? So I would give him lavish, genuine praise because I've watched a lot of his work over the years and I've financially supported. But then I'd say, hey, I see what you're doing and I know why you're doing it. But if you, A, don't ever sell our emails to somebody else, B, space out your space out your sequence. Give us some time to breathe and read. Okay, once every few days, once a week, ping us, build a relationship slowly over time, educate us, fortify us, and empower us with value dripped out, and then make an offer every so often that's a legit good for you offer. If you're in this situation, interested in this topic, you should consider this and you will get benefit even if you don't take me up on it. That's the right way to do it. And then if he thinks he's making a lot of money now doing it like the 10% way, once he improves the eloquence of the delivery and the timing and all the things that make it impeccable to do business with people who know what they're doing and do it right and like are good at it, he would see a huge, huge spike in revenue and income. And that would be something that could stay long term because he would actually build a genuine relationship based on substance instead of the quick hit 8 emails the first day, 10 more emails the second day. Like it's like a barrage. It's like blitzkrieg, and it's not good for a lot of people. I love his work. I support it. But even with my sales experience and marketing and understanding what he's doing, I can't think it's a good thing or approve of that because I unsubscribed from that list faster than any other list that I was interested in.
Yeah, and that's a really important means of building a relationship. But I think the most effective tool for building a relationship with strangers today is a podcast, right? Being in people's ears and talking directly to them. And
I disagree.
Okay.
I'd say it's what you do 3 times a week. It's like having real interactive, dynamic conversations with people about these topics. So either teaching a course and taking questions and answers, or having forums with conscious, intelligent people who can bounce. Like, so it's not an echo chamber. When I did a podcast, I was like speaking to 50, like people 50 years in the future. There was no feedback loop for me to like, you know, I'm trying to get this information in the future. Now, Brett can have forum. He can hold court 3 times a week with 20, 30, 50 interested minds and talk about these subjects and not wait to read the comments in his podcast. Like, he gets like improvement right there on the scene, and so do they.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, that's a relatively new development over the last couple months, but that has been absolutely great. Like if people are in Rich's autonomy course, or if people bought the full downloadable version of the University Ideas into Action Summit, they can participate in these discussion groups 3 times a week. And I don't lead the conversation. I'll start by saying the discussion begins with your question or topic. And then usually like 20 minutes later, I'll just be in a full-blown rant. And I like that. It's like I listen to a lot of these meetings and I go, geez, this is the podcast I want to do, where it's like this kind of discussion, this kind of energy. I feel like a lot of the time when I'm putting out shows, I'm trying to be, I have a broad audience, and in these conversations, I really don't have to cater to the broadness of the audience. So they can be pretty lively, pretty ranty kinds of discussions, but they've also been really productive. And we've shared and been able to go into detail about a lot of really valuable ideas in philosophy and psychology, in business, and it's one of the greatest things that I've done. So thank you for. I agree with what Rich said. That is a better relationship building tool than just doing a podcast, even though doing a podcast is still a pretty superb relationship building tool when you're dealing with complete and total strangers that you don't have any way of communicating with back and forth.
And I'll say that doing a podcast and teaching are both things. If you think you know about a topic, then try to do a podcast on it, or try to teach others about it, or try to make an instructional video about it, because that's really going to give you the use and grasp of that concept, that skill long term. It's going to give you the competence and the confidence to be able to articulate it and showcase that value to other people. And it's like it's a constructive use of overlearning. So if any of you are overlearners, it's how to harness and put to work and leverage that overlearning you might be doing on a regular basis.
Right.
Yeah, that's it reminds me kind of sports a little bit in regards to, like, if you're teaching somebody, because there's a lot of stuff like sports, a lot of it's reaction. You're teaching your reactions, and you almost forget that why you're doing something or why you react a certain way. And then when you're teaching somebody it, you're teaching a child, you're talking to somebody about a specific technique on how to get past somebody or break down the defense. And once you have to analyze it and actually verbalize it, and you're like, okay, this is what you're doing. It makes you understand it much better and much greater. So it does make sense, like teaching a topic or a subject, or doing a lecture, or doing a video just on one specific thing. How how beneficial that can be.
Well,
But
like you can play a song on your guitar, right?
yeah,
Can you teach me how to play that song? I'm gonna go grab my guitar. Can you teach me right now how to play that song?
uh,
And that's the next level. It's like, okay,
yeah,
you know how to do it. Do you know how to explain what you're doing to
yeah.
me? I'm gonna, pick here, and I'm gonna hammer here, and I'm gonna do a slide here, and I'm gonna do a bar chord here. If you
But
don't know the words to
main
explain it to
thing,
me, and I don't know the words you're saying, then the teaching can't happen, and I'd be a bad student. Don't try to teach me.
but verbalizing it and being able to put like, I love having long conversations with my kids, right? And like, I don't know if you guys, I think I sent it to you, Rich, but I just started a podcast with my kids just for the f of it. And they're always like, "Oh, I want to do a podcast," and I'm like, "You know what? Let's put some microphones in front of you and see what happens."
Dude, I watched that with Lisa. Yeah. Because I've done that
It
before
was
with Lucas, but I never put it on YouTube for anyone to watch. Like, we'll be
it,
interviewing Godzilla and stuff in the studio, but
that's
what you
hilarious.
did was awesome. And you and your wife being there at the same time and letting them do their thing and then shaping it, like it was interesting as a parent. It was entertaining as a parent, but they had fun, and they are now like sprouting roots in that area of, oh, this is powerful to be able to communicate to other people, and we should all be able to do it.
Yeah, I think there's benefit in also, as adults, and especially as children, as putting your thoughts into words. Like you said, your ability to explain something and try to get somebody else to understand it. Because I think it does help you further understand your thoughts on things. And so, like I was telling my wife, I'm like, worst case scenario, it just becomes a fun little project we do from time to time, or maybe I'll do the typical 7 podcast thing and quit. But but it's just one of those things where I think there's some benefits in the kids. I mean, first of all, having a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old sit down for 20 minutes is a accomplishment among itself. Like, that alone is already pretty hard. But to get them to sit down and actually just talk, and we're just kind of like you said, molding the conversation, letting them be silly and talk about whatever they want to talk about. There's some benefit in that. I mean, so I think one of the biggest issues with, like, I call it like the well, like Dan Carlin said, the American dream is called American dream because you have to be asleep to believe it's true, or that it exists, or something along those lines. A lot of foreigners, like my family, come here, and I'm sure your family, obviously, because unless you guys are Indian or something, but Native Americans. But all these foreigners come here because a lot of times we get caught up with this whole financially trying to get ahead, and then we come to a more stressful situation. We create a more stressful life, and then we realize, like, okay, so financially we're ahead, but I'm not happier, and I'm not in a better mental place, or I don't feel like I'm enjoying life as much as I was where I came from, or whatnot. And so I think there's a lot of benefit in just spending time with your kids and talking to them, taking the, like, don't get so caught up in your career that you're constantly neglecting your kids, and you're constantly like, my kids have learned so much from me just taking time to explain things as best as I can, having conversations with them, answering questions, letting their curiosity go crazy, and not giving them a quick, like, answer, like, I don't know, it's because of this, or it's because, no, it's like, okay, let's sit down, let's actually talk about this. Let me attempt to get through to you in regards, like, how do I explain this to you, in a manner that you can understand when you have a question. And so much of their understanding of the world has come from those conversations. And this goes back to, like Brett said, it's one of the, when I first started a podcast and when I first got into them, there's a lot of friends of mine, and I'm sure you guys were in similar situations, where they're like, you're just going to talk and people want to listen to that? Like, you're just going to have conversations? Like, it seemed absurd, like this idea that people are just going to listen to people. And I'd always tell people, I'm like, those fun nights you have with your buddies at the bar or just around a fire, and you talk all night? Why the fuck was it fun? Because conversation, right? It was conversation. It was the conversation, and you gained something from it. You learned something from it. You maybe shared something personal that was thought provoking, or was inspiring, or was emotional, whatever it may be. I'm like, that's what I get out of podcasts, and that's what I'm hoping give out a podcast. It's a journey for the listener. It's a journey for myself. I'm learning from this. Like, so in a way, it's a little bit selfish because I'm also gaining a lot from this. I get a reason to hang out with you guys for an hour or two and bullshit and share ideas and talk. And so to me, it's like you can't. The power of conversation is so understated, and now with podcasts getting popular, it's almost like finally people are starting to realize like the benefit. Like I think Midnight Mike said it on our last Union of the Unwanted about like the power of audio compared to video. Like how you seem to be more engaged, or maybe it's because of the lack of distraction visually. I don't know what it is, but there's something powerful about conversation. I've always loved conversation. Brett talks about going on rants. I mean, I'm fucking notorious for it. I mean, these podcasts, if I had $1 for every time like some hardcore fan of whoever the guest is on the show is like, well, this host just let the guy talk. I'm like,
let Matt Farah talk, Ricky.
Yeah, I'm probably Matt Fear was probably one. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm trying to think. There's definitely a few guests where they have some hardcore fans that are not happy that I didn't let their guests. But and I always try to be polite. I'm like, it's not an interview. I'm like, you can get an interview anywhere. I'm like, this person's been interviewed 1 billion times. I'm like, when they're on,
these are conversations.
Yeah,
and conversations, people both talk, and sometimes like the other person, like there's different rules to it, is what you're saying, right? You got to let their audience know. It's conversational rules, not interview rules here.
And there's going to be times like I remember when I had Abraham Bolden on, right? And Abraham Bolden, he was the first black Secret Service agent on a presidential detail. He was telling his personal story, right? Or John Barber, another guy who's a great storyteller. I become a spectator. I'm just listening. Those are shows where I barely said a thing, but that's. It's almost like, are you keeping track? Are you keeping score? Like when I go out to eat with my friends, this is my rule. I don't care what you eat. I don't care what you drink. We split the bill. And you know what? If we're good friends, it's all going to even out one day. One day I'm going to get that $50 steak. You're going to get a couple appetizers. The next day, next time we go out and it's like that way, nobody fights. Nobody takes advantage of each other. And you know what? But we do filter out the shitheads. Like I always say, I'm a cool person collector. I'm like, if there's a shithead who ruins the vibe, who ruins the thing, I'm like, don't invite him back. I'm like, and that way everybody can just enjoy each other's company. Nobody's arguing about the bill, whatever it may be. And so yeah, I mean, what the fuck was my point? I'm sure I had one. And
that you go off on tangents and interrupt your guests.
As I do it.
You do it to yourself, man. That's part of the like the draw to the show, though. Like, what's Ricky gonna say?
Yeah.
That's why I tune in. That's why when I see it on my YouTube feed, I'm like, oh, it's evening. I'm gonna listen to Ricky and do something constructive. And while I'm doing something constructive, I can fully listen to the video. And I'll look over and I'll be like, oh, which Hollywood square is talking? That's okay. Yeah, I see it. But then I'm just internalizing as I'm being productive. And that's how I can consume so much work of all my colleagues and stay abreast of what's going on in the world, not through looking at mainstream media because it's fucking toxic.
Do you guys ever feel like, because I get this all the time, just hearing you say it, I'm getting the feeling. You guys ever like, why the fuck do people want to listen to me? Like, it's still like, it's very, like I very much appreciate the fact that somebody finds some value in what I'm doing and what I'm saying and just sharing my perspectives. I mean, do you guys get that feeling sometimes where it's just like, sometimes you can get caught up in your work and you're just putting it out and you're doing it. But then every once in a while you take a step back and you're like, wow, man, like, people are telling me that I'm having some effect on their lives. Like I'm giving them some actual value in regards to like helping their perspectives, their understanding of the world. I mean, you guys have been doing this longer than I have. And I mean, I'm sure you've gotten plenty of emails that really like pulled at your heartstrings where you're just like, wow, man, like I've changed this person's life. And it just, boggles your mind.
Those types of emails always keep me inspired and keep me from ever feeling sorry for myself. Because when you see like the thing you produce can change somebody else's life, first off, I always let them know when I do talk to them, you did that thing. Like I put the thing out there, but you chose to listen to it. You chose to internalize it. You chose to take your action. So I might have let you know that's possible for you to do, but you have to take action that you made that change because that's part of your self-confidence issue probably, right? The other part is being able to see people in much tougher situations than sometimes I've ever been through and how they've risen and pulled themselves up and not had a victim mentality, not taken to the addiction like of entitlement, because that's a pretty addictive drug right there, thinking that you're entitled to things without actually doing hard work or like developing your own anything, right? Yeah, it's inspiring, but I always just take it as that's the wake. That's not what I'm doing right now. That's a reflection of things I could have done 10 years ago, 15 years ago sometimes, because people are just coming across that stuff and they're writing to me because it's the first thing they've heard or whatever. But yeah, I mean, that does happen. It happens all the time over the years. And but I don't pick it up and I don't put it down. So I see that, that's nice, it's inspiring, but I really just keep focused on figuring out problems, listening, coming up with plans, putting things in schedules, and executing the schedule. Like this is like one of 30 meetings I do a week. This time slot that you're on. So be busy, be productive. Don't get distracted in the minutia. Keep vision of what the priorities are in your life, because as COVID-2 electric boogaloo comes up this winter, we're all going to be challenged in new ways that we never thought possible. Food prices, all sorts of things are going to be skyrocketing. People won't be looking at each other anymore. And, we'll probably have to wear earplugs and blinders by then for some reason. I don't know why they would want to do that. But if we don't keep ourselves grounded, keep ourselves focused, and keep putting value out to other people, because there are unlimited problems to be solved in this world. And there's some pretty big ones that do need to be solved. Like they're trying to eradicate freedom forever. I think that's a big problem. We should do something about it. And if we don't be diligent, continue to be diligent in getting the word out there, and yeah, it can be conversational like this, or it can be straight up, here's a PowerPoint presentation and all the if, ands, buts, here's all the evidence. But then you have to also have the rhetoric part to be able to get that story to people. And that involves narrative and pathos and mythos and other things that most people aren't educated enough to do yet, which is why we could all just say, okay, well, the game is rigged. It's the chips are stacked against us. We should just give up and quit and go play Nintendo or something. Or we could say, oh, what a great opportunity. We're living in an exciting time in history. We have the chance and the wherewithal and the networking ability to put ourselves in front of this information and build the skills we need to go out there and be the change we want to see in the world, to be a better person, be a better family member, be a better person in your community, and have those influence and leadership aspects come out. It's like we're all waiting for ourselves to develop, and we're in a system that stifles and retards our development from like day fucking one, man. So at some point when you take control over your own life, you won't chase money or put yourself in a cubicle to do that. You'll learn to have a balanced life where you get enough of what you need to be able to live and survive and thrive, not only to pursue, but to attain, retain, and maintain your happiness. Because I think that's the American potential if we unlearn our fear.
Well said. And just to your question, Ricky, I think, I've said before that there's people who put out a podcast every single day. And the reason why they do that is because every day they put out a podcast, right? That's what they do. And I think it takes an enormous kind of talent, or I guess in some cases, maybe some degree of self-deception, to feel like, even though value is subjective, you have something to contribute of value to other people's lives every single day. Now, there's a kind of cynical and negative and judgmental saying about, like, there's one group of people who talk about people, right? And then a healthier activity than talking about other people is talking about events. And then a healthier group of people actually talk about ideas, right? And I think it's like dumb people, average intelligence, and then smart people is the way that it's framed. But just, I mean, think about it as far as like, what am I contributing to the world in terms of signal versus noise, right? Every day you could talk about people, right? I remember like Entertainment Tonight, TMZ, that stuff's on every single day. All right, so you want to elevate and talk about events. Cool. Now you're as good as CNN, right? You're talking about events. And you can put something out into the world every day if you rely on those two things. But to get, and this is where I really, really respect the talent that some people have to, even if they're building off of those two, like people and events things, to talk about ideas, and they can still hit like a every 24 hours schedule with that. That's amazing. I can't, or I don't have enough practice with it yet after 11 years to feel like I can pull that off. So I feel like I've gotten more discerning about when do I have something to say, or when can I take the message of somebody who has something to say that's important right now or helpful right now, like through a guest. How can I facilitate that conversation between this person and my audience, even if it's one way? When do I have the right energy? When do I have the right enthusiasm? When am I not going to be dragging my feet through a conversation? You know, these meetings that I do at 9:30, I've had 2 of these, right? 2 full ones of these, and I'm ready to go, right? And it's the beginning of my day. I've already had my most productive hour behind me. I'm feeling good. That's my magic hour for having the right enthusiasm, maybe sometimes I go too far. Maybe I get too ranty. Maybe I get a little angry. But you know, I like my energy level at that time. So if I'm being, you know, low energy, if it's not the time where I'm the best listener, if I'm doing an interview with somebody, I've learned that there are conditions under which most people shouldn't want to listen to me, right? Like if I'm all bent out of shape, or I'm just treading over the same ground, or I'm talking about people in a gossipy way, like all of the things that I'm capable of doing, right? I'm capable of slipping into not creating what I think is good content, but still feeling like I need to do content. People shouldn't want to listen to that. So I have tried to be like, this is the time where I'm most on, where I have the best energy, where I'm capable of doing the most active listening. And right now is a time where we could speak, either me by myself or me and a guest or me and a couple of guests, and actually say something that people need to hear or people want to hear. So am I surprised that people would want to listen to me? Those things considered, no. That makes sense, because I feel like I'm being a considerate guy a lot of the time when it comes to that. But there certainly are times where I had no business sitting in front of a microphone and recording it and then asking somebody else to listen to it. Like those shows have happened. I can't promise they'll never happen again. But I really try to be the nicest compliment I ever got in the history of podcasting was you really seem to respect other people's time. Now, it's not like there isn't a market for long form content, obviously, right? But also, my thing is that there is a segment of people out there who are like, make this as efficient as possible. And again, like we're doing an unedited conversation here, and I love this style. But if I can give somebody something in 45 minutes that somebody else would take an hour and 45 minutes to give them, I feel good about that. Like that's a service I can do. I like the production process. I like the post-production process. Those are things that that's a skill that I think I have. I do other work in that area because of that. I like to do it. I like to see like how much can we carve this down to something that's really like sharp and just what it needs to be and nothing more. But, you know, it doesn't mean it's the only approach. It was just like, I know there's a segment of people who want that, and I try to, you know, make content for those people. And it's wild that we probably have a huge crossover audience with, you know, Peace Revolution's 20-hour podcasts, right? Which is maybe the same people just wanting a different thing at a different time, you know? And your show.
Many of those podcasts have you in them. That's why people like them. Because it's not just all me talking, it's me finding evidence and putting people like yourself and Ricky and Luke and Burmis and Corbett and TrueStream out there in context of the other relevant information and evidence.
Right. So there's 3 in the conversational shows, which I was a part of a show that was just very conversational and go with the flow for a number of years. And it was one of my most favorite things that I ever did, you know, just completely unedited conversation. It was great. So, you know, there's all different styles, and I think I've found a style that works for me as far as like feeling effective and like I'm creating the best content that I can create. But, you know, there's all kinds of different audiences. So
Yeah,
I am not surprised that people want to listen to what we do, because I think a lot of work goes into it. But I have certainly produced dog shit, and I try to learn from that, and I try to not produce any more of it.
But I love the fact that you hit on that human aspect of it, and I love the fact that you think about it, because that's something I'm always like, I wonder if other podcasters think about it, because you know, there's, like you said, there's different parts of the day, different, like to me, I'm very much like I think time's the most valuable thing. So like for example, last night we had a barbecue. I went to go play soccer. Then my buddy wanted to have a fire at his house, and it's like midnight, 1 in the morning, and I'm like, you know, I plan on going to the gym tomorrow morning, but fuck it, let me just have one more drink. Let me just hang out a little longer. And I'm always like, you know, I always say you can make more money, you can't make more memories. You know, once that moment's there, I could either go home early and lose out on a memorable night, or I can, you know, enjoy the night and worry about everything else later, you know. But so much of my lifestyle, like you said, you know, from work to the kids to going to the gym to, like, I find that like certain parts of the day or certain routines, I'll have the best conversations, or I'll, like you said, I'll be a better listener, or maybe I won't go on as long as rants. Like today I went to the gym in the morning, and because I feel like if I get like my heart rate up and I get my blood pumping, I seem to be more engaged and more focused. um but uh but yeah, I mean, when you're putting out shows and you're not on like a schedule, either in your own personal life, you're not on a strict schedule, and or you know, you're not putting out shows always at the same time, there's going to be shows where you're just slightly different at this moment when you record than when you are at that moment, you know, because of all these other factors. I mean, when people are listening to our shows, they expect us to almost sound the same, feel the same, be the same every show. They don't take in consideration, or maybe they do, but sometimes I'm curious if they take in consideration like the lack of like sleep, maybe because of a holiday weekend you went out or whatever. Maybe you and the girlfriend, you and the wife had a fun night the night before. You're like, fuck it, let's just have another drink. Let's just stay out a little later, and then it affects your performance the next day. But I think that's all a part of being human, right? Like, you know, when people used to talk about like downloading your consciousness into a robot, and like the ability of doing that, I always found it fascinating, because I'm like, well, who I am right now, I'm going to be slightly different after this conversation, and who I am tomorrow, I'm going to be slightly different than, you know. So it's like downloading your consciousness, downloading you know, who you are into a robot. Um, it's all based on what day you do it, right? Because it's like that robot's going to be who I am today on this exact date at this exact moment. 5 minutes from now,
And
10 minutes.
pain and frustration have shaped who you are today, and they wouldn't exist in a cybernetic character, which is the danger of technocracy.
Yeah,
It makes us non-human, even if you think you're, you know, you can't put a soul in a machine using the science they have today. So sell that story someplace else, because you can't do it. But they can claim they do it, and they can get people to participate in that and pay them a lot of money. It's a cunning attempt to trick people at this point.
absolutely. Yeah. Well, speaking of being valuing other people's time, uh, maybe I should let you guys go because I've held you down for like 2 hours.
I was just about to say I have some bad news. I'm out of time for today, and yeah, I would love to, you know, even though I haven't thought once, you know, while we've been recording this, like, man, I could once I get my hands on this MP3 file, I could get it down to an hour 25. I really love the flow of this conversation. It felt really great. And it's cool that the three of us just get to sit and talk, and other people get to hear it. And it's certainly, since I started to listen to podcasts and create my own, there's been lots of times where it feels so intrusive. Like, yeah, you should just have like an unrecorded social life, Brett. But it's like, oh, why didn't we record that? It was great. And I think that's one of the really wonderful things that you're doing, Ricky, is that you create a feeling here where it's like, you know, when I'm one person in this situation, and for the audio listeners, I'm taking the mic away from my mouth, right? Like, that's one version of me. And then once this thing comes up to my mouth, it's like everybody tenses up. It's like one of the things I recommend for people who do interviews and they do them face to face is to have one of those little Zoom recorders. And if you're willing to compromise audio quality a little bit, instead of putting a mic in somebody's face, just put that thing on the table, and you get a much more relaxed and authentic conversation with people, just because it feels more like a conversation. And it is a special talent to be able to create that feeling while we're on video. I see the recording software running behind our Zoom call on my screen. Like, I know we're doing a show, but you do a great job of creating a really relaxed feeling. And thank you. I'm really glad for any opportunity to do this. And I will be on more of those swap casts. And yes, it would be helpful. I second what Rich said, if they weren't on Monday night. But I would love to to continue to do that and continue to talk, because I think you have a format here that really works well.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I like you said, I think so many people who haven't done a podcast don't realize how hard it is once you put them, like just when you start hitting record, how hard it is to just talk the way you would talk if you weren't being recorded. Like a lot of people believe they can just, there's just something about it that you just, and a little bit, you know, I've found it with myself in the past, just being like really self-conscious on sounding like an idiot. You start second guessing what you're going to say. You're like, maybe I should bring this up. Maybe I shouldn't, instead of just like talking, you know, and just letting it come out. And I think with myself, like I try not to take myself too seriously. You know, I've been lately, especially of late, I've been asked a lot to do interviews, and I'm like, for what? I'm like, well, I'm not an expert in anything. What do you want to talk to me about? You know, but I think it's that kind of mentality that I have of like, okay, I'm like, I just like Brett said, I
You just have to be curious, man. It's not about your relevant experience. What does Brian Rose have for most of those interviews? Homework and genuine curiosity and present-mindedness, which you can do, and you give voice to it very easily. So the thing that you can do without turning it off, like it just runs without you turning it on, that's where it's like a good use of your talent. So it is, your format works for you and your personality set.
And
that's what Brett was saying.
We live way too close not to do what Brett said. I'm gonna, because I have recorded a podcast. I had one with Hunter Mott some years ago where we met up, and then I just like, hey, I'm going to record this. If I'm like, I don't know how the quality is going to be. If it's great, I'll use it. If it sucks, then I won't use it. But I'll just put my phone here and let it record. And it was one of like my favorite conversations I had because it was so casual. We didn't even know if we are going to use the audio. We didn't really care. And but we should all get together. Like I said, I'm awful.
Yeah, come here next month. I'll mic all you guys with labs. You could just record the whole day and have at it.
But
we can do a podcast from the studio here. You just have a lot of content. Genuine, you know, walking around audio. There you go.
Let's go out to eat. I'll take you guys out to eat. I'm awful with money. I just spend money like an idiot all the time. So like, I'll even pay for dinner. I'll pay for dinner, and we'll just we'll all go out to eat.
I have a student here in Connecticut who's a caterer, and she owes me some catering, so I could have it catered if we have this hypothetical party we've been talking about.
Oh yeah,
I love it. Let's talk about it. Let's make it happen.
COVID friendly catering.
Yeah, we'll get together. The three of us. We'll have you know, we'll have actually there's some good Portuguese restaurants also too in Hartford. I mean, Ludlow has some amazing restaurants, Portuguese restaurants, because it's all.
I know some good Portuguese people around here. I might be able to do a little something special for you.
Yeah, let's go out
for
to
making
eat.
the trip.
We'll go on like it's like going on a vacation in Portugal. I'll show you. We'll drink some traditional Portuguese wine. We'll have some traditional Portuguese espresso and brandy after dinner. We'll talk. We'll get a little tipsy. Get probably too emotional. You know, everyone.
See, you've tried this on me before, but it only worked on Paul Verge when we did the deep end in my last studio. Paul got a little tipsy because you brought the bourbon and he was going a little too fast. So that is the thing. Ricky he'll bring a little libation and see if he can liven up the party and who gets a little loose. And then he's like, that's a podcast.
So yeah, that's, you know, there's something about alcohol. That's the thing. Like alcohol, there's something about it where it does spark some good conversations because you put your guard down sometimes. There's definitely some conversations I've had with people over a glass of wine or some whiskey that I don't think I'd be able to recreate without the alcohol's help a little bit. So, you know, it can be a tool that can be used, you know, if it's used properly, it can really, you know, create some magic. But anyways, guys.
Cool. Well, I wanted to say thank you, Ricky. I handed off 3 different meetings to be able to make this slot with you and Brett work. It was a really good investment of my time. I hope that anybody listening to this gets a lot out of it. And the shameless plug at the end would be if you want some skills, if you think that schooling has left you with an earning disability, go to getautonomy.info/19 skills. Download that report. And we also have a version where Benny Wills and Sonia Wills are performing it in audio and video, so you've got no excuse not to consume the information in that report.
And if you want to help us both, it's right at the top of my website, too.
Go to Brett's site and get it.
Yep, you can just click on the banner right under the email opt-in, and it'll take you right to it.
And the website
schoolsucksproject.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. I know we're both probably experiencing similar weather, so it's a beautiful freaking day. So we should all spend some time enjoying it today. And but thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. we'll definitely make this happen. We're all going to get together. I know when we all saw each other at the Red Pill Expo, it was a busy weekend. Everybody had stuff going on, so it was a little crazy. But I would love to get you guys out, have some wine, bullshit a little bit, and just do what we're doing now. Like Brett said, I kind of have that feeling where a lot of these life experiences, I'm like, I wish I recorded that, and I think that's the beautiful thing about podcasts. It really isn't something new. It's just taking some amazing experiences of having conversations with friends and just sharing it with other people. So it is a pretty simple concept, but I love it, and it really is a selfish thing too, because I always suck at saying goodbyes, as you guys know, because you listen to my podcast. I don't know how to end these things, but thanks, guys. Thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your day and weekend, and we'll keep in touch.
Awesome. On 3, let's all just unplug our computers from the wall.
And for now, we didn't save anything. Thanks.
1, 2, 3.
Bye.
Smash.